Let's talk about Station 11, a novel by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, in this novel, the world is in a post-apocalyptic state where a flu called the Georgia flu breaks out and people contract it and die within 48 hours. Kind of similar to COVID, but we don't talk about that. This story takes place in Toronto and many parts of America as well, and it starts off on a normal day when a famous actor named Arthur Lander is in a production of King Lear when he dies on stage, after which a doctor in training named Jivan goes on stage to save him but ultimately fails. Later, Jivan gets a call from his friend that works at the hospital saying that the Georgia flu has arrived to her hospital and it is horrific and it is very deadly. She tells him to pack his bags and leave the city immediately. Jivan, panicked by the news, calls his wife, tells her to leave town, and then goes to a grocery store taking mass amounts of food, 7 to 8 carts of food, water, supplies, and takes all the carts in a snowstorm to his brother's apartment. His brother is in a wheelchair and cannot move, so they camp out in his apartment until after the aftermath of the Georgia flu being an outbreak on the news. Later, he goes around and eventually finds himself in a small town where he becomes the doctor. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Clark, Arthur's close friend, just gets back from a flight when the world hears about the news and gets stuck in an airport where he lives the rest of his days. In the airport, he will then collect items and store them at a museum, which he calls the Museum of Civilization, which is with items from the past civilization before the apocalypse, like phones, motorcycles, game consoles, whatsoever. People that were born within this post-apocalyptic landscape will then come and see these civilization relics in this museum. While this is happening, Kirsten, 20 years after the fall of humanity, goes around with a traveling group of actors called the Traveling Symphony, playing things like Shakespeare and King Lear for many people, or just regular music. Eventually, she meets someone named the Prophet, who has taken over the town in which one of their original members of the Traveling Symphony had resided after being pregnant with a child. Seeing that the friend isn't there, they talk to the Prophet and later learn that the Prophet is a sick man who takes women as his children, takes women as his wife, and even marries children, saying that he should be responsible for repopulating the earth, and they later leave with a person who hid in their cart, and they take them in. The Prophet, meanwhile, follows them after kidnapping 6 of their members, and 2 other members, Kirsten and one other, get separated from the group. Later, they find the Prophet and his men, save one of their fellow symphony members, kill his men, and kill the Prophet before reuniting with the symphony in the airport, where they see the Museum of Civilization. After Kirsten goes there, Clark shows Kirsten a civilization which has light, in which Kirsten gets hope again that maybe humanity is being rebuilt after all.